One thing I wanted to be very clear when it comes to using high-speed sync is that high-speed sync isn't a look or a style, but just using a fast shutter speed with your lighting. And I wanted to mention this immediately at the start of this video because this is something that I still get asked whenever I share a photo of mine online and it gets a good amount of attention. I'll inevitably get asked, did I use high-speed sync? Was high-speed sync used? And it's a little bit confusing because high-speed sync doesn't just magically improve the quality of my photos. It's just a factor of how I took the photos. There's a lot of different other factors that will amount to the overall quality of the photo, but high-speed sync is not one of those. Unless you see the settings that I shared with that photo that I posted online, there's no way to tell if I use high-speed sync or not. The reason why I wanted to mention that is because even though I did use high-speed sync for many years, I now primarily use ND filters to get the same results. This video is going to go over why I switched to using ND filters and how that changed my gear for the better. Before I continue, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Adorama. Adorama is an industry-leading retailer that has been serving photography, videography, and audio customers for almost 50 years now. Their motto is everyone is creator, and they do their best to unleash that creator within us all by providing us with the tools and expertise necessary to get the job done. I personally shop at Adorama for both the great deals on products I use and recommend, but also the great customer service as well. If you find yourself interested in any product that I talk about in today's video, definitely check out the links that are going to be in the description area below and be sure to use those links if you decide to order. The absolute biggest downside to using high-speed sync is all the power that you lose once you start to use it. For anyone not familiar with high-speed sync, all you need to know is that every camera out there can use flash in your photos with no issues up until a certain shutter speed called the flash sync speed. The sync speed does vary and it's dependent on the exact model of camera that you have, but typically it's around 1/250th of a second. So let's just say that was the sync speed of the camera in the quick example that I want to give. If you didn't have high-speed sync with your flash and you went past 1/250th of a second, the flash is going to show up less and less in your image until it doesn't show up at all. High-speed sync allows you to use any shutter speed with your flash and it will show up in your image. I thought it would be important to describe flash sync speed and high-speed sync because it does matter a lot here. Because like I said before in the example of 1/250th of a second being the flash sync speed, once you go to that very next shutter speed, I believe 1/320th of a second, that is when you experience the huge drop in power with high-speed sync. Not at a much faster shutter speed, but right when you enter into those high-speed sync shutter speeds. And another downside to using high-speed sync is that high-speed sync essentially makes your flash into a constant light source. So if you were, for example, at 1/500th of a second, f4 ISO 100, if you were to go to 2 stops darker at 1/2000th of a second, you would then need to either raise your ISO 2 stops or widen your aperture 2 stops. So you'd basically be adjusting your other camera settings because of the higher shutter speed with high-speed sync. And you might be thinking by now, okay, you're saying constantly that you lose a lot of power, but how much power? And I'd have to reply with, you lose more than half the power of your light when you use high-speed sync. You could definitely be fine using a big strobe like the Explorer 600 Pro or even the original Explorer 600 and continue to use them with high-speed sync, but it's important to at least know why that is, and that's because you have a lot of power to work with. You might not necessarily feel that you need more power because you have a lot of power, 600 watts of power, but it would definitely be a different story if you only had 60 watts of power like the Godox TT600 speedlight or something like the Evolve 200, which is 200 watts of power. I actually did use a 600 watt strobe for many years back in the past at past photo shoots when I was younger at age 25, but now that I'm older, me and my back are trying to figure out what lighter gear that we can use instead to get the same results. And that actually leads me into finally telling you guys what gear that I use. Remember a second ago when I told you guys that using high-speed sync would cause you to lose more than half the power in your light? Well, if you had a 600 watt light, for example, like I used to use, and you divide that by half, that's already 300 watts. So in high-speed sync, if you're losing more than half the power in a light, using high-speed sync with a 600 watt light would cause it to be weaker than a 300 watt light without high-speed sync. Nowadays, instead of using a big 600 watt strobe, I now use the much smaller Explorer 300 Pro, which is still my favorite light after so many years because it's all the power that I need in the flash, and it actually also has a constant LED light source that's bicolor, which I use at my night photo shoots. If you're interested in a full review of this light, I actually already made one, which you can check out in the top right corner of the screen. There's gonna be a link there, and also a link in the description area below. If you could get the same results in your photography, but with lighter gear, I'm sure that many of you guys would take it because I certainly did, and I definitely recommend it. It's been such a great change that I wish I did it sooner. By avoiding high-speed sync, I've been able to keep my camera bag light and actually be more versatile with my photography. In my camera bag, I actually carry two 300 Pros because it's all the power that I need with my flash, And I actually carried 2 additional Explore 100 Pros because those lights are very, very portable. So in case I ever need to bust out a 4-light setup with my photography, then I have the option. This big drop in power when you use high-speed sync isn't only limited to the Godox/Flashpoint strobes, but actually every light out there that uses high-speed sync, because it's just the way that high-speed sync operates. The only difference that there's going to be when you use other brands of strobes with high-speed sync is the amount of power that you lose, whether it's half the power or much more. To give you guys a visual demonstration of exactly how much weaker your lights get when you use them with high-speed sync, I thought I would throw on the screen right now all the different lights that I have and how weaker they become when you use them with high-speed sync, just in case you have those lights as well. And to be even clearer, even though you might be using your strobe at 1/1, which means full power, if you're using your light in high-speed sync, that's not actually full power. It's not actually the whole 600 watts of light in a 600 watt strobe. It's going to be that much weaker output I just showed you on the screen. Lastly, there are a few other downsides to using high-speed sync, such as draining the battery faster, slower recycle times, and a higher chance of overheating the light if you tend to shoot photos in rapid succession. Having said that, I actually haven't experienced those things myself. I haven't felt like the recycle time was much slower, my lights have never overheated, and I didn't feel like the battery drained too fast at my photo shoots. But in total honesty with you guys, I shoot very, very slowly, and I always charge the battery of my lights after every photo shoot. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys learned something from this video, learned something about high-speed sync and ND filters. If you guys want to see a video on ND filter suggestions, then let me know, because I do think that that would help you guys out with certain recommendations, because not all ND filters are the same. I want to give one last thanks to Adorama for sponsoring this video, because it does allow me to dedicate time to my channel and make these free videos for you guys, so definitely check them out. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the very next video.